Turkey's President Erdogan's problems in Syria are EU and NATO's as well. Erdogan has made a strategic blunder in the past, and the current isolation he finds himself in is mostly self-inflicted. Instead of gaining middle ground and allies for a neo-Ottoman vision of a Trump-esque make Turkey great again, he has opted for a geopolitical partnership with Russia, defying the gravity of history. In Syria, he thought he could go it alone without support from his partners in the West, and is currently not only facing existential problems, but is putting at risk his control and power in Turkey. Where he went wrong: Russia and Turkey have been rivals in history, and despite playing against the historical tide, Erdogan has finally come to the same conclusion his predecessors have come to. Russia's interests run inherently contrary to Turkey's. If Putin needs to pick between a strategic partnership with Turkey and full control of Syria, Portia, which is essential for his posture in the Middle East, he would choose to confront Turkey, not openly and not directly, leaving most of the legwork to proxies, but ultimately he will control the shots. Russian frigates, Admiral Makarov and Admiral Grigorovich, equipped with Kalibr cruise missiles, passed through the Bosphorus Straits to the Mediterranean Sea, which sends a strong signal that Putin seeks to negotiate out of position of strength, calling Erdogan's bluff on the shutting down of the straits. The Turkish president made a gap buying Russian S-400, which are useless against the Russians. He still relies on Russian technical personnel, which makes them worthless in fighting off Russian or Assad planes attacking and killing his troops in Syria. His main motive behind the purchase was to have an independent capacity to defend himself against Western planes, including his own air force. Now he's $2.5 billion and lives of more than 40 Turkish soldiers off target. NATO air defense system still protects Turkey's airspace from the south. Again, it does not cover Syrian airspace, and NATO members are unlikely to agree to confront Russia beyond NATO's borders without explicit mandate and purpose. US support is critical, but President Trump is unlikely to change his mind in an election year unless he sees the merit in helping Turkey behind the scenes with weapons and technology to fight back Russia. The US president could use this in his campaign to counter allegations that he's a Putin proxy. A possible development, but unlikely, at least for now. Erdogan has alienated the EU in search of an elusive energy kingmaker status in the East Med. Restoring trust is neither easy nor automatic. Turkey has asked the NATO Council, which includes the ambassadors of all 29 NATO allies, for urgent consultations on the situation in Syria under Article 4 of the Washington Treaty. While it's true that any threat to the territorial integrity of a NATO country is a threat to all members, it is unlikely that NATO will engage in Syria, not even to stop a refugee crisis. Russia will not risk a confrontation with NATO, but is likely to stand its ground in Syria and protect his protégé Assad in his attempts to regain control over Idlib and kick out out of the country the remnants of the Syrian opposition. A new tide of refugees suits Putin well. Relations between Greece and Turkey are likely to further sour should refugees start to flood Turkey's borders with Greece. Erdogan could, in principle, shut down the Bosphorus Straits and thus drastically cut supply and logistical lines of the Russian military, but not in the short term, as the recent case has shown. This is a clear red line for Putin. Unless the US gets involved, Erdogan will not dare. Reversing Turkish-Russian relations is neither foregone nor easy. Putin's going to walk a fine line trying to avoid confrontation, but will not back down easily. However, worst-case scenarios of a direct war are premature for now. The Kremlin Tsar, regardless of his macho posture, he will avoid a cowboy standoff with Erdogan. Although both like to poachers, tough leaders, tough guys, they both stand to lose a lot more than gain. Today's phone conversation between the two presidents could be the first step in a de-escalation effort. This is a probability, not a certainty. The fact that Lavrov himself went out to meet the press means that the situation is tense and is above the grade of Peskov to explain. The condolences offered by the Russian foreign minister over the death of 33 Turkish soldiers could be interpreted in Ankara as adding insult to injury. In short, the chances for a full-scale confrontation between Russia and Turkey in Syria are slim, and the two presidents might meet soon. The honeymoon, though, is over. The critical takeaways Takeaways. Turkey will reconsider its relations with Russia, including the purchase of military hardware and in the energy field. The immediate impact will be traced to the gas talks between Potash and Gazprom, as well as the Turk Stream. Turkey will play the refugee weapon against the EU, but will need to reach a compromise and not overstretch. Turkey remains all too important for the EU at the same time. Therefore, it will have the right to expect more significant help to ward off a humanitarian crisis. Although President Erdogan deserves criticism for his selfish approach to the Idlib province crisis and in dealing with the Kurds, he is right that this is a major humanitarian crisis and the West is doing little or nothing. Both the EU and the US have done little to bring to the fore the bombing rates of both Russian and Syrian government planes in mass killings of civilians that have triggered the new refugee wave. This reaction to the perpetrated genocide by Assad's regime on his own people is a moral and policy failure of the civilized world. Finally, both the EU and NATO should get involved in warding off a new round in the humanitarian catastrophe in Syria, despite different political expediency and a plethora of excuses at home. This is for now, and I will keep on commenting tomorrow.